All right, so it's been a while since we talked about our favorite little trucker going on here, Google Stadia. So Google is hosting another Stadia Connect, which is their pretty much kind of press conference, direct kind of style thing, on Tuesday, April 28th at 9 a.m. Pacific time, 12 p.m. over here Eastern time on YouTube. And so this is just in general. Let me bring up the article. This article comes from IGN's Adam Bankhurst. Google is hosting another Stadia Connect on Tuesday, April 28th at 9 a.m. on YouTube. Those who tune in will hear from the team and see new games coming to Stadia. A short teaser accompanied by an announcement came on Twitter. This is shortly after they just announced that free... Now, this is... You gotta be careful the way you phrase it. The free Stadia accounts, which is you can access Stadia games that you have to repurchase.
It's a trial. It's a trial, and it's
trial,
not the free service that they talked about when they were marketing the service initially. It's not that.
Yeah. It's so which caps you off at like 1080p. You can't hit the 4K and all that kind of stuff like that. So, in response to the news itself, we should also take a chance to kind of, I guess, give our bigger opinion and update on Stadia, because I'll be honest, Stadia's been quiet for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Last time I remember they were really amping up that they had Destiny on there, which was weird because Destiny 2 is free to play everywhere else, and it's like so easy to access now more than ever. It came to Steam, it came off that Blizzard network and stuff like that. So, one, what is your thoughts on this kind of their whatever they call it, the Stadia Connect? So I don't know, do you think anything's gonna be announced that's worthy there to even pay attention to? And in general, what are your thoughts on what's on Stadia's journey so far?
Yeah, so I mean, and I'm going to try my best to be as fair to Stadia as possible. I understand they do have some contingent of a fan base, and they're playing to them. So I don't want to completely crap on the service. Some people have positive experiences with this, so I'd be remiss to act like those people don't exist. Mm-hmm. For me, I've paid kind of tangential connection to, or paid attention to some of the smaller announcements they've been making on Twitter and on their YouTube. And generally speaking, I found most of the offering to be pretty unremarkable. There's no major exclusives on there. A lot of the games that they're bringing to the service that they're like, hey, 4 more new games, are all games that have been not even the 2018 releases. We're talking about substantially older releases that are widely accessible for a much cheaper price point. So generally speaking, I think a lot of the offerings on Stadia have been super unremarkable, and they're kind of fighting an uphill battle with getting people to jump onto the service, because again, like, devs don't want to put in the effort to bring their games to Stadia because there's no one there, but nobody will come there until devs put their games on Stadia. So they're kind of like in a tricky like spiral, and I'm positive on them in the regard that I think their format, not as it is, not in the marketing structure, not the payment structure, but the idea of streaming games, this in conjunction with things like xCloud, and perhaps in some forms PlayStation Now, is in many ways the future of gaming. I think that. And I think streaming games is ultimately, once that broadband internet is widely accessible everywhere, will be the direction everybody would like to go into, or at least that being a mainstream offering. Kind of like when digital first came in, like, not everybody wanted to jump onto it, but that became an option, and now everybody's slowly moving that way. I think streaming will be kind of the same way, and there's limitations to that. I understand that. But the problem is, I guess the question remains is it's not so much that is streaming the future of gaming, but is Stadia going to be the one to offer it? And as of right now, I don't have the necessary evidence to believe that they are. I don't want to see them fail necessarily because, again, competition breeds excellence, and another player in the game industry keeping, Microsoft and Sony, on their toes in some capacity, I think is generally a positive thing. But yeah, as of right now, Stadia is kind of like a non-factor. I do see this, Stadia fanboy accounts trying to argue with people on Twitter. It's not really a thing. I'm actually surprised at the drip feed approach that they've had to marketing a new service. Google's a massive conglomerate with a mass amount of relationships. So I'm surprised they haven't been able to leverage that more effectively into getting some bigger titles. Like the fact that like Doom Eternal wasn't on Stadia day one is nuts to me. Why is that not there? If it's coming everywhere, and Switch is obviously an exception that requires its own level of optimization and stuff like that. But if Stadia is supposedly this massive powerhouse, power is no longer a problem. You could play in 4K, 1,000 frames per second. You don't have to worry about nothing. Why is this multi-platform game with no real exclusivity anywhere not on your platform? And they could be like, okay, well, Bethesda didn't really want to work with us that closely and stuff like that. And it's like, well, you guys got to figure that out if you want to make this service viable. And I have little faith in Stadia, not because of just what Stadia is, but because of Google's complete unwillingness to commit to a service. They introduce things, and then they kind of let it fall by the wayside. And I just would hate to see people invest in a service, put money, they buy these ambassador program type situations where they buy the controller and they buy the Chromecast, and they hook it up into their TV. They're buying games full priced on there to play, I don't know, friggin' Super Meat Boy. And then fast forward, a couple years, and it's like, Google, we're not making money off this, we're done. And then these people are kind of just ish out of luck. Like, I just would hate to see that. So as of right now, I don't take Stadia that seriously. I take streaming games very seriously, and I think that's in many ways the future of gaming. But I just don't have any reason to believe that it's going to be through them.
Yeah, they just aren't, like you said. You wrapped it up pretty well. I like that. They're just not committed. They're not being too open, because when obviously Stadia launched with a lot of issues, and when people were asking, how come our games aren't streaming in 4K, they blame the developers. They're like, no, your developers didn't do it. When Mortal Kombat came out, right? It was Mortal Kombat thing that came out.
11, yeah.
Yeah, 11 that came to it, and it ran like I'll be honest, it ran like garbage. This was at the height of Mortal Kombat with everyone trying to practice for like all these tournaments, and it was running terribly. The story mode was running terribly. They didn't take it. They're like, oh, NetherRealm must have not enhanced it or optimized it to run on Stadia. Well, you gotta give them a platform. You can't tell them, be like, throw them a kit and be like, figure it out. It's not how it works. You've got to stand by them and be like, listen, we understand we have some issues. I don't know what what the answer would be if it's for a while just bring every game to not 4K to strengthen that. But it's personally, I obviously haven't tried Stadia. I'll be honest with that. I did try Project xCloud, and I even went to the point, well, I have an iPhone, so I had to play. My only option was to play the Master Chief Collection. I wasn't like people who have Androids who were able to dabble a little bit more, but it was super simple to. After I had all the stuff downloaded, because that's Apple's fault, it was super simple to touch an icon, sync my control to my phone, and just stream Halo. It was super, super easy. And from what I've seen most people talk about on Stadia, it's not that simple. Now, again, like we said, I know there are certain people who had a great experience, and that's good for them. And, there's other people who it's pretty clear as day being supported and paid by Google.
Yeah.
And they're part-timers on Google.
And they don't want to talk about that, though. They don't want to talk about that.
They never discuss it. That's one issue I have on YouTube where I follow. And she's always like, oh, no, yeah, I've got no problem with Stadia. I think I've mentioned before that I follow her. And she's like, I've got no problem. Like, yeah, but you're also part-timing working for Google, and I think was married to a guy from Google or something like that. So it's like, you kind of have the hookup. Like, she had gotten all this stuff super early. I'm like, it's hard to take your word for it. It's like if I worked for Sony and been like, nah, the PS5 is the best thing ever. Well, obviously I'm going to say that.
Which we do see that quite often, but they also don't want to talk about that, do they?
No, that's what I'm saying. So Stadia's kind of got to start being upfront, be like, listen, things are not the way we need to be. They have to start trying to focus on, if you want to be a competitor, you got to be day one. Like you said, you were able to get Doom Eternal on Xbox, on PlayStation, and on PC day one. Your choice. Obviously Switch, we all knew was coming a little bit later. You can't come out and be like, well, hey guys, don't play Doom Eternal. Come play Final Fantasy 15 again.
Which is free on Game Pass right now.
Which is free on Game Pass. When I was working at GameStop, you could get the Game of the Year Royal Edition for $15. I'm like, guys.
It's like, come on, guys.
Come on. What are you doing? You want me to play a 4-year-old game and then pay the same price that almost Doom Eternal was coming out at? So this is where there's an issue, and people are confused, actually, because I've spoken to a few people who are like confused. They're like, yeah, but isn't it just a service? I'm like, no, yes, it's a service you pay for, and then you gotta purchase the games. And I know there's a lot of back and forth to it. People try to compare it to Game Pass, and it's not like Game Pass, because that's like if Game Pass, you charged your whatever, your $15 a month, and then on top of that, another $45 or whatever it is for another one. Like, I just downloaded Gears Tactics that comes out this week on Game Pass. I didn't have to buy it again, though. I didn't have to pay my gold subscription or my ultimate Game Pass subscription on top of another 30, 40. It's just they're not clear. These are things that they kind of hid in their talks, and I hope from the Stadia Connect on Tuesday that they're a little bit more clear on what they want to do. Because I remember that first when Stadia was announced, I understood nothing. They're sitting there talking about all this, optics and all the stuff and how fast it's going to be, and then when it hit launch, none of that was there. All those features were ripped out. Remember, you couldn't play multiplayer games or whatever it was, and they were super underwhelming, and they were super just not together. And I think that's what they have to do is restructure themselves, be clear on your messaging. They are not being clear. They're very being like tongue-in-cheek, lying. The same people I see, they always have like these influence. Well, they probably won't now because of the COVID situation.
Yeah.
The same influencers that I see on stage, I don't want them to be the ones writing reviews on Twitter, because it's a conflict of interest. Obviously, if Google flies me out in a private jet with nice sparkling orange juice and tells me to play, whatever 2014 game they want, the Tomb Raider game on Stadia, obviously I'm going to be more, inclined to say, yeah, it works super nice. Yeah, obviously. But I want the real people, like, a big YouTuber, Angry Joe, was not able to get his Stadia for a long time. And he was like, listen, I wasn't able to review it because they didn't want to send it to me. The supply was super short. They were not responsive on. I've seen a lot of people have been like, who wanted not just refunds, but tracking was an issue. The service did not work in their areas at all, and they were just not allowed refunds. They were not allowed any sort of repercussions or compensation. And that's the real big thing, is Stadia has to be clear, has to be confident, because they talk about their stuff like they're not confident. And you gotta just have the features. Your features aren't there, the games aren't there, and the service is not there. What do you have going for yourself?
Yeah, and I mean, great points there. I hate to be like doom and gloom about this, because I think for some people, is a lot to like about this service. But I think just like you can talk about how your experience with Stadia has been overwhelmingly positive, and the frame rates are beautiful, and it looks great, and the game starts seamlessly, and they boot up, and this is the gaming in the future, and it's an amazing experience. I think that is just as valid of a perspective as, hey, I booted this up and it looked like a checkerboard on my screen, and it was chugging along like some broken claymation movie. Like, I think that's a valid perspective too to note. I would also like to note the fact that I think we're having a very different conversation if Stadia launches truly like the Netflix of gaming. And what I mean by that is, imagine if you have like a Netflix, like a streaming service where you stream movies, but you have to pay for every single movie or show on that service. Mm-hmm. It kind of defeats the purpose, doesn't it? You're paying a subscription fee for this service, to access things that you're also going to pay for. But imagine if you really do have a Game Pass style service where you can boot up and stream those games immediately, and you pay this one time a month fee. Whether that is, anywhere from $15 to $45, that's for them to figure out and to see what, monetization strategies are most effective. But I honestly think that they need to completely re-examine their pay structure if they really want to break into the mainstream. And if they want to change it later down the line and be like, all right, now that we have all these early adopters, all these people, they have a player base of a couple 100,000, now we could change the pay structure into something where maybe you have to pay like discounted rates on certain properties, like when games leave Game Pass. That is something I think that will resonate with the mainstream game community way more than what they have right now. Because as of right now, their offering is, hey, do you want to play games that you probably already have In varying quality. It might be better, it may be substantially worse, but it's going to be inconsistent pretty normally depending on where you live. And also pay more for that game than you'd pay on other services. The value proposition's all screwed up right now, and there's little to no reason to switch to Stadia if you're not one like a tech junkie. If you're all into new tech period, then yeah, go for it. But if you're not a tech junkie and you own some console or PC, there's literally no reason to go to Stadia. There's no thing that Stadia is offering right now that is not available just as good, if not better, elsewhere for a cheaper price. Like, we just got to be honest with it. So, I mean, I want to be fair to them, and I'm not writing them off completely. I don't have Stadia. I've seen it played. I've dabbled in it lightly with Destiny at a friend's house. So I know lightly how the experience is, and I know some people may take issue and umbrage with that. Be like, hey, if you're not there playing Stadia every day, you don't have the right to speak on it. But, I mean, I think it stands to say that literally no one's playing this. So should no one have an opinion on this? Because guess what? You guys are a super minority of people who even give a crap about this service. So, I mean, I paid attention to it. I watch it. I watch all the Digital Foundry stuff and like that. And frankly, I'm not impressed. Yep. So I wish them the best. And I hope the early adopters into this program ultimately have a positive experience and get their money's worth out of it. But as of right now, I see no reason to take them that seriously when they're not really putting forth the effort into making a solid value proposition to the average consumer.
Yeah, I think that's why also this event on Tuesday, I hope they're not underplaying it / overplaying it or overhyping it, because if it comes out and it's just like a bunch of nonsense talk about how good it is, if they don't realize it or address the issues, then there's going to be a lot of problems. If they're just going to talk about how many players they had at one point, you know, oh, at launch we had this many people. Well, how many people are still there now? You know, that's the kind of stuff we need to see. So I just hope they don't try to sugarcoat any of that nonsense, and at the same time, don't treat like this is a whatever. So hopefully they understand what they're doing. I don't even see, like, so when Stadia was coming out and was out, that weird commercial was on YouTube everywhere. No matter what video I clicked, that ad where that guy would come out and start floating in the air, yelling Stadia. I don't see any ads. I see no one talking about it. I don't see this on any online website. So hopefully they do. Hopefully they've been really reworking their tools and reevaluating their structure.
Yeah, it's strange, man. I mean, they're Google. They own YouTube. I mean, and I guess maybe to avoid some kind of like optical issue in terms of conflict of interest, they're not trying to inject their ads into everything still. But I mean, hey, do you want a successful platform or not? I mean, you have to make that decision, and I understand they're like, okay, we're something different than the rest of the game industry. We're trying to basically reinvent the wheel here and, you know, take the game industry into the future. But there's such a thing as looking at your competition, seeing what works, and adapting that to your platform. And their strategy right now comes off a little bit tone deaf. But again, I wish them nothing but success. But as of right now, there's not a chance in how I put a dime towards their service until they really give me a reason to switch over, or at least bring it into my current gaming, library.
Exactly.